All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Sue Landay. I'm president of Trainers Warehouse. And looking forward to, within our show and share format, this is kind of our first open office hours experiment. And I've set the theme of team building as a way to kind of give us some structure and focus to start the conversation. But I'd really like this to be whatever is most helpful to the folks who are on the Zoom. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, aside from what are your favorite pastimes, but when actually, let's start easy. When did you first hear about Trainers Warehouse? Do we have, are you folks like, diehards, you've known about us forever? Are we sort of a new entity to you? Just kind of give me and how much training have you done? So if we can just sort of introduce ourselves to each other a little bit, that would be awesome.
Well, hi, I'm Wendy, and we started using a lot of items from Trainers Warehouse. I've been in my current position for almost 10 years, and I am an administrator for a very small Medicaid program. And because it is so small, we have to do all of our own training for the state of Washington. And all kinds of things. One of the things that was kind of transformative and really a good team builder was the thumb ball. And so, but lots of different items, and I'm so grateful you're having this time, and can't wait to learn more.
Excellent, thanks. Anyone else want to take a moment to introduce themselves?
So I am in the property management industry, and we just had our first annual management conference in March. And we gave the book to all of our managers and regionals, Who Moved My Cheese. So we ordered.
What was that book called?
Who Moved My Cheese.
Who Moved My Cheese? Yep.
So we ordered all the cheese stress relievers and some other things. And I see on social media about, the balls that they throw around with the different topics. So I've done training for many years, but I've just now found out about it this year.
Oh, awesome. Well, welcome to the community.
Thank you.
And Kathy, you've introduced yourself online. Thank you. Been training for about 20 years and have known us for almost 7. So my dad started our company over 30 years ago, and he's passed away, but I've been kind of at the helm for more years than I want to admit. 25, I don't know, a big number. Anyone else have a specific way they'd like to introduce themselves or share something that they'd like to get out of our talk today?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Betty Schrader. I'm with the City of Wichita and longtime customer of Trainers Warehouse, and always pleased with your products. I've been utilizing your services for over a couple decades for sure. And I've always just been thrilled with what you had to offer, and it's always keeping me up to date on some of the latest, products and ideas. And so when I saw your message about this opportunity, I thought, wow, a great opportunity to meet other people and to learn more about Trainers Warehouse.
Excellent. Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Benita, were you going to jump in?
I think Lisa was before me.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, my name is Lisa, and I work for the dental hygiene. I'm in the Division of Dental Hygiene at the School of Dentistry at the University of Michigan. And I am an academic advisor, administrative support, and I coordinate all of the orientation activities. And so I think I purchased a thumb ball probably 3 years ago, and actually it was 4 years ago.
It changed your life forever.
Yeah. And so in learning more about team building or community, I think that's really important for our students to get them on board in a new program at a large institution. And so I appreciate the thumb balls. I'm also interested in de-escalation, if there's any de-escalation activities. Or
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. Any other intros before we kind of dive into some of these topics or ask some other questions?
I guess I could go. So I am Benita Neely with the Ohio Department of Youth Services, and I'm a policy administrator. I was introduced into Trainers Warehouse probably about 20 years ago, but it wasn't through actual training. It was through your docu-sleeves that you used to sell. And we used to buy those all the time. So, and over the years, I've just become interested in training, and I'm getting a degree in human resource development. So I just always want to learn something new about training, and I'm going to be presenting the first time at a conference, and it's going to be how to do training on a budget. So I'm just here to get some ideas.
Awesome. Great, great, great. Anybody else? We get thumbs up from Wendy. Yes, I love the interactivity. So if you, because this is the first time, I'm trying to kind of sort out a little bit like what's going to be the best way to kind of have a conversation. So I did hear, you know, we have such a broad range of backgrounds and interests and experiences, which I think is awesome and just, you know, will lend itself to a really interesting conversation. I heard some questions about, or lots of comments about thumb balls. And how kind of to de-escalate conversations. Curious if there are other, and I want to talk about that, and I have some thoughts about it, but also would love to hear about other people's experiences with that. Are there other challenges that you specifically want to talk about and hear about? And maybe what we do is we get started on that first conversation, on that first question, and people can kind of type in other questions that they might have into the chat, so we can all kind of migrate over and make sure that this is, you know, or, you know, raise your hand and say, I have a deeper question. I don't want to just type it in, but let me ask the group, whatever. Does that sound okay as a format to you guys? Okay. Does everybody know what thumb balls are, like what we're talking about? Okay, let me just ask, is there anyone who doesn't know who needs to see one? And I'm just checking the chat. Okay, so again, the idea is you have these balls and you catch it. It's imprinted with different conversation prompts, and you respond to the prompt under your thumb. So we have these, you know, some of them are just like my first prompt, a favorite pastime outside of work. That's not really going to get you into any sort of hot water or anything like that. But as you're talking about something like your team dynamics or diversity or ethics or happiness at work or any number of other topics, and that's where I'm guessing the question about de-escalation came from. How do we deal with that? Do any of you have, and you know, feel free to unmute yourselves, have specific experience in dealing with those challenges yourselves?
Yes, you know, when you're dealing with adults and, you know, some have been in their jobs for a really long time and you're training on something that, you know, everybody needs to know. there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of, that the personality type of, I know what I'm doing, so please, you're wrong no matter what you say. So I can see why de-escalation would be great.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
You know what? I think when you're a first-time trainer, you're always taught about ground rules
Mhm.
and establishing ground rules in the beginning. But I am finding in today's climate, if you have one of those hot button topics, ground rules get thrown out the window when you kind of get those emotions kind of into the conversation. So maybe if someone could speak to de-escalation, when you do have the ground rules, how do you redirect people back to the ground rules and to kind of diffuse those emotions?
Can I ask, how, Benita, when you've heard about setting up ground rules, do you tend to say, here are our ground rules, or you have the group develop them? You do have the group develop them, and you fill in where items might be missing, like speak for myself, all of that. So what happens when you just say, call a timeout and say, can we go back to these? Does that not work, or is that a helpful tool to kind of break away from the substance and just kind of call a timeout to say, we need to talk about our process?
So I think that will work, but I deal with like correction officers. And so they're like a whole breed unto themselves.
Mhm.
And so when I try to do like, okay, time out, what I want us to do is take a break. And when we come back, we're going to review the ground rules and kind of see where our head is at. And then I'll like throw on some music while they're on break to see if that will help get them in the right like kind of attitude. And then kind of start again. But
And
sometimes they still come in with these big burly
helpful, or-
attitudes.
sorry.
Sometimes they still have their little attitudes, but
But it that does help, taking a break. And sometimes people just need to know that they've been heard. Sometimes I didn't realize it's kind of old fashioned, but like having a flip chart or a board and writing down what you heard, or putting concerns in a parking lot, can also be a really helpful tool. So to acknowledge that these are all issues and that they need a time for discussion, but not, say, here's our focus right now. That's absolutely something we need to talk about. Let's schedule a time to move on to that topic. Let's kind of keep this, I like to call it a parking lot of ideas, and making sure at the end of your conversation, you come back and say, these were really critical things. Clearly, I mean, they almost derailed us. How can we get back to those now? And, or can we schedule a time when it would be appropriate to get back to those? And who needs to be part of those conversations? I've also seen people have what they call an ouch card, which is basically, a physical card or a piece of paper, a sticky note that someone can say that just says, it just says ouch, or some way that people can acknowledge without interrupting, but let other people know that something affected them in a way that may not have been intended. And that could be another way to give people that space for reaction, and either decide to dig into that or say, okay, I recognize that that's something that is uncomfortable that we need to address in a different way or be sensitive to.
Can I ask a question on
Yeah.
that? So I'm unclear how you're using the card. Are you putting it on the table and somebody holds it up and says, ouch, like how exactly is the card being used? I'm not, I'm trying to, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen, everyone have a bunch of them, or they're on a table and someone points to it. Or you give one to each person at the beginning of a conversation. There's just sort of, everyone has it in proverbially in their back pocket. Even without a card, I can imagine you kind of create, some sort of symbol or acknowledgement, like maybe it's pointing to your heart or to your, something that you heard that feels uncomfortable. So I think that you could be creative with or without a physical tool like that. Other thoughts, experiences, suggestions?
We've tried the parking lot and a question box so that we make sure that we're having lots of breaks so that people can get up and stretch and make sure that they're not uncomfortable physically when they're hearing something uncomfortable. And the most important thing that with the question box, it worked well because people could have a certain sense of anonymity. And then we would schedule time either, right after a break or at the end of the day, but it would definitely be scheduled time. We've had some groups that just are not a good meld. They don't work, they don't play nice in the sandbox. And so we've had to break those trainings into smaller groups. And when we know we're going to have someone who is consistently either very, very opinionated or just downright disruptive, we make sure that we can get to the other people that are in that small group with them. And we've had to, go to supervisors and things like that when people really get confrontational, I guess is the best word. So I love the idea of the whole de-escalation thing. If there's a way to figure out how to do that so we don't have to break down into small groups, because again, now that's a huge, another investment of time that we have to make is in all these small groups.
One of the other ideas that, you go ahead first, Lynn.
I'm so sorry. I was just going to suggest the thing that is coming up for me is, unless it's, really, really emotional but you kind of can see things escalating. One of the tools that we've been trying to use is some coaching techniques and just naming it. I'm really feeling, or I'm really hearing some frustration in your voice. What's behind that? Or what is this bringing up for you? How is this, topic making you feel, and sort of just name it and use a what or a how question rather than a why question, because then people are automatically defensive. But it's just kind of oftentimes just posing those questions and having people be able to kind of have to articulate gives that space for de-escalating themselves or kind of bringing the emotion down.
Lynn, could you repeat your question that you asked?
Questions like, what is this bringing up for you? Or what's behind that? What? Yeah.
To that idea about sort of explicitly breaking away from the content of your conversation to talking about the process and how you're having the conversation and what's going on, kind of it reminds me of in my previous life before Trainers Warehouse, I did training in negotiation and conflict resolution, and so became very familiar with all of the kind of getting to yes process and thought behind all of that. And one of the things that I always come back to with respect to that is that if, like, in a contentious negotiation where you're talking about, interests, options, coming to decisions, that's all kind of about the content of whatever you're discussing or trying to agree to. There are two other elements of negotiation that are referred to in that structure. One is communication and one is relationship. And those are both about the process. How are we talking to each other? How are we relating to each other? And the best advice that I've heard that came from that is to be explicit about, I want to break away from the content of what we're talking about and explicitly talk about our process, how we're communicating with each other, what our relationships are, in the same way, Lynn, that you were suggesting that you stop and ask those questions. You can be really explicit about saying, we need to break away from this and shift gears a little bit. And I think that it also kind of helps people understand the differentiation in what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish. And, sometimes you need to negotiate and decide on a new process of talking to each other, which is sort of, Benita, like figuring out whatever those ground rules are. That is talking about your process. How can we have this conversation productively? What do we need to do differently to make each other feel okay about digging into some of these difficult topics? And I should also have said, Sarah and Carol, who are on the call and have been a little bit quiet, are Trainers Warehouse colleagues who are listening in, but they may not be participating as much. So happy to have them here. And if you guys have anything to contribute, please do, but I didn't want anyone to misconstrue. Who are these names that Sue's ignoring? Other suggestions, questions, a new topic? Sarah, you've probably also been looking at the chat a little bit more thoroughly than I have. So if you have it.
Yeah, earlier there was a question or a suggestion of a topic, which is how to debrief when the activity didn't go as planned. I'm not sure if I captured that question completely accurately.
Yeah, that looks so. Benita, that was yours also. Any other specifics, or should we request any replies and suggestions from the group about that? Anybody? Feel free to jump in whenever. One of my policies always was, when I was training, was to think about transparency. And whether that, whether it's because you're a new trainer or because things don't go as planned, the idea of saying, okay, this threw me for a loop. This isn't how things usually go. Let's talk about what happened. The team debriefs that I've seen, because, we sell so many teaming products and games and so forth. And because it's always about the debrief, there's always a set of questions. And typically those start with what happened. And the idea of those what happened questions is first to all kind of have a common vision of what transpired, because you could have two people, having been part of the same experience, but saw different parts of it or saw it differently. It's kind of like seeing the elephant, right? Like you've got the person who's got the tail and who sees that part and is focused on that, and somebody else knows about like the rough skin. Like you might be experiencing the same activity, the same event, but pulled out really different information. So the first step would be, what happened here. The second is usually the how did it make you feel? So whether things went as planned or not, I think that those are still questions that you can pull out. It might also be, Why did those things happen? And it's only after all of that where you would say, and what can we learn from this? How do we take it from, what happened in this session, whether we were on track and things went well, or it was a complete cluster mess? What can we take from it? How could we take these lessons and apply them to what's happening in our day-to-day in our real world? Other experiences, contributions on that one? Oh, you guys, come on, come on. Unmute yourselves.
No, I think you covered it. I think you went step by step and covered the steps that you would normally take in a debriefing session, the discussion process, and what have we learned from it. Or I'm the only phrase I would use different. What are our takeaways, right? Because that might be different for each person too. And it does inform you whether you're getting your message across or not. Or if
And
you're
that's
teaching something entirely different. Just didn't know it.
And you're right, it's not necessarily what did we learn, but individuals may have very different takeaways. So thank you for that clarification. Well, we've been at it for almost a half an hour. I feel like we had, two great questions, but I also want to give you an opportunity to ask each other questions about, current struggles or challenges. Just questions about what one another may be doing.
I can share a success story in team building. So, not everybody is, sunshine and roses, and they're definitely not going to respond to, how do you feel? In fact, they're going to cross their arms and give you the dirty look. But what we did is, we deal with people who experience an intellectual disability or related condition. And so one of the wonderful services that the state of Washington has is called person-centered planning facilitation. And we would get together and we would discuss services that we could offer to people. So what we did was we had a person-centered planner come in to the team and say, the team is going to be the person. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a goal here, of what's our plan as a team? What do we want to accomplish? And we decided that, and this coincided with a couple of months before we had the 7 Habits training. And so everybody, was kind of in tune with, developing their own personal habits. Then we decided, okay, as a team, as a group, what is our mission? What are we doing? So the thing that the facilitator did was she was one of those people who had the butcher paper all over the room. And she had several different categories, and we had to list what our values were. So we already knew what values were because we were in the 7 Habits. What are the values that we hold together as a team? What's important to the people we serve? And from that, we picked several items, and we were able to see which values we all held in common because they were written down several times. And we also gave people stickers so they could put a sticker if somebody wrote down what they believe. And we just counted up the stickers, and those were the values that we all shared. And we had like 10 different values, and we were able to core it all down. And we came up with, we were committed. Our values are social justice, respect, person-centered practices, and partnering. So from there, we were able to form our mission statement, and we're the only little program in the state of Washington that has our own mission statement. And it's through a commitment to social justice and respectful person-centered practices. We partner with individuals who live in institutional settings to utilize their power and choice. And every time I say that in a training when people don't know anything about our program, they all respond so positively, like, I can't believe those are the things I believe too. And, you know, it's one of those things that is very bonding. So sometimes when things go upside down, we have to get out the mission statement and be like, okay, guys, this is what we have in common.
Well, I love that also to de-escalate that, you know, that question of like when people are at odds, to kind of bring them back to, you know, look at all of our commonalities and look at our values, like our basic values is, you know, it's great.
Yeah. And, you know, it was one of the most moving and impactful things. And of course, we had to argue about how it was going to be worded, and it took compromise to, you know, bang it all out. You know, even still, you know, people are people, right? And so it's like, there are some people that will respond well to a game or to something. And then there are the others that are just like, you know, I really don't want to be here in the first place. So, you know, make it worth my while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. Really great story. So other questions and or suggestions for, you know, whether you like this format, how might we in the future change it? Do we like, you know, is this helpful?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, my name's Betty Schrader,
you're
with City
good.
of Wichita. And what interested me in this forum, not quite sure, you know, what we are going to do. I'm very interested, obviously, in your products. I'm interested in trends. I'm interested in, you know, how to utilize, like you gave the example, Thumball. I've been using those for years and got it from your organization. It's made a big difference. I utilize it in a variety of settings and so on. So I'm so interested in what, you know, your business offers, and then, you know, ways to, you know, utilize them. So that's where I'm coming from as I'm listening, you know, to the conversations. I'm sure everyone's looking for something different, but I just want to share what I'm looking for. And I realize you're probably not, I just thought about this a moment ago. I thought, oh, I hope that doesn't sound like I'm just wanting you to do a promotion, you know, like commercial. That's not what this is at all. I'm just so, you know, your organization has made a huge difference in my career. And I have been training for multi-billion-dollar aviation companies. I'm here again with a municipality of 3,100 plus employees. I'm also a professor for 25 years. So everything that you've been blessed with, you know, coming up with, you really do impact lives. And I don't want to get too sentimental here, but I actually mean it, because when I was a consultant, you know, pregnant with my 5th child, and you know, I couldn't work full time because I had, you know, I'm taking care of babies, and as a consultant, I would always go to the Trainer Warehouse catalog when it would come in the mail. And I would just go through it and scour it, and then I would buy little items that I could afford at the time, and it just I always felt like, you know, in this field of HR and professional corporate learning, it always kept me kind of abreast. I always felt like, you know, I knew what I was doing, because I felt like, you know, you're such a credible organization. So anyway, there we go.
Yeah,
I'm family.
thank you.
I'm family.
It's
I just
all
love you guys.
thank you.
Oh,
It's
you
sweet
didn't pay me or
to hear you.
anything. No, but I just appreciate what you do, and I keep you. And then this is one more point. You know, there was a bonus I didn't even know, but at the city of Wichita, we do seek out also, diverse organizations, women-owned businesses, and those kinds of things. I didn't even realize that. And we have been receiving HR here. We have 17 departments. We've been receiving awards year after year, and they say that Betty, she uses some companies. I didn't even know. I didn't realize it was impacting because we're really big on, different types of ownership and diverse companies. And I thought, well, I didn't do it intentionally. I said, this company has just been a winner for me for decades. I didn't realize it put a plus sign in a happy way. And we've been getting awards for, making a difference with diverse companies. So that's just a side.
My dad used to say, because he started the business and my mom was in the business also for a while. And he had someone wondering if it was really a woman-owned business, if the president was a man at that time. And he said, you try working with your wife and daughter and being in charge. So those are my dad's famous words.
Yeah, but again, thank you for what you do. It's a service that makes a difference in my profession.
Thank you. And I think that be happy to talk more about trends either later today or in another conversation. But Lisa, I think you also maybe had something you wanted to contribute.
Well, I think it was Benita that asked about team building activities. And when you're bringing in, because we work with students and they're pretty young, I wouldn't say they're freshmen, I would say more of a sophomore level. And it's a small cohort, and it's unlike most undergrad programs where they get a list of courses and they tick them off and they're, they graduate. These are students that go from class to class together. And so because they're so tight knit, there can also often develop little cliques, and it's such a diverse population. And so we really strongly feel that if we can build some community as they come in that first week, that it will help position them better throughout the rest of the program. So this year we just did a fact or fiction real quick, where we divided the group up into two different A's and B's, and actually it was maize and blue because we're U of M. And so two students came down and they read their three facts, one which was fiction, and then the other student had to indicate which was fiction. And so they got a Smartie if they answered it right. But anyway, that allowed them to learn more about each other. And then the next day we brought them together, broke them up into groups of 5 or 6, and said, pick a leader from your group, and we want you to find 3 things that you all have in common. And so that was pretty positive. And then lastly, we kept those groups and we asked the leader to leave the room, and we indicated that we wanted the students to talk about a subject, say it was what your plans are this summer or anything, but we want you to go into real detail about that. But when the leader comes back into the room, you are to shut them out. No eye contact, you're shoulder to shoulder. You just move, position yourself so they can't join the group, and you ignore their questions. And so after that, it was a conversation about, okay, how did that make you feel? And it just allowed them to really explore what it's like to be shut out, how it feels to shut somebody out. And I think that it was a really positive, the students really engaged and could clearly understand what that was about. And it was helpful. The students really enjoyed it. When we did a poll, what did you like most about orientation? It were the activities. So that was helpful.
Yeah, that ability to connect with each other at deeper levels, especially with all of the division and people feeling separated and COVID and everything. That's such great ways of bringing people together. In terms of, Betty, in terms of some other trends that we're seeing here, I feel like And actually, it's funny because who said that they first bought? Oh, maybe it was you, Benita, who said that you first bought docu-sleeves from us. We still do sell those, but they're trending down. There's, I would say, fidgets and team games and stress relievers and things like that are the things that we continue to see real sustained interest in. As Kathy, I'll get back to your question, as well as kind of blending online and hybrid online and in person, and trying to find all of these interactive tools that can also work online. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing. I also feel like decks continue to be really popular, whether they have images or questions or icons, photos, but giving people different sorts of images or words to pick from to respond to continues to be pretty popular and growingly so. Docu-sleeves.
I hope you still sell those because I have to order several hundred more.
We
I
do.
utilize
This is a
those for
big one.
certificates.
You can slide papers in the top, either certificates or job aids, and they're thick, they're sturdy, they have sticky tabs on them so you can put them on walls. And they also have, sometimes they have little Velcro things on them so that you can go in office cubicles, but people aren't really in offices or cubicles or in fabric walled places. We'll have to look at that. So yes, that's what docu-sleeves are. And they're like potato chips, because once you have them and you start using them, you just want and need more and more and more. Any other suggestions about if we were to do this again? Helpful to have a theme, good to sort of keep it open in the way that I have. Should I be planning more? Any other tips or suggestions or feedback for me? Lay it on.
Well, I kind of like the idea of it being themed a little bit. It helps. There's going to be certain things that I'm going to want to learn about, maybe not everything at that moment, right? Maybe I can go back, revisit it at another time, but if it's more intriguing if there's either a theme or there's an agenda set where this is what we're going to talk about. And then if I know that in advance, then I can be more prepared to, offer examples that I have had, right, in the past.
And was this kind of too loosey-goosey, or did we find a good balance here? We're doing okay. All right. Well, let me thank you all. Thank you all for being here.
I was gonna make a final comment that I would like to make. So I do this thing with, they're called Learning Rebels, and they do a coffee chat, and they do it maybe like, I think like they do it twice. It's always on a Friday. I think they do it like twice a month. Well, they have like I don't know if it's a Miro board or if they have some kind of document. So as we're all talking and brainstorming, somebody's writing up those notes. So we have those notes to always like go back to. So it's kind of helpful that, oh, well, Lisa told me about fact or fiction. Let me go back to see what she said about that. And so that's something that we may want to think of, like, how do we document what we're learning? I mean, I took lots of notes, but some people aren't as tactile as me. They want digital. So that's also something you could think about.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Any other tips? Suggestions?
I'll just add, Benita, to what you're saying, and maybe you've checked this out, but we do record these meetings, and we do have a site where they all are recorded. I understand some of it might be better to see the words and, sort of the bullet points of what we spoke about. But if you remember, if you go to the recording and you remember generally where in the conversation the topic came up that you were interested in, you could just fast forward to that spot within the video.
All true. Well, again, thank you all for participating in this. We will post it online, like Sarah said, so it will be available to you. And we'll keep at it. Again, new efforts, you'll see how they evolve. But thank you, and everyone have a great day. I'm going to stop the recording now and